Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into the wild, dangerous, and absolutely jaw-dropping life of Griselda Blanco, the woman who became one of the most infamous drug lords in history. Known as the Cocaine Godmother, she built an empire that changed the game of narco-trafficking forever. From the slums of Colombia to the glitzy streets of Miami, her story is packed with ambition, betrayal, and bloodshed. Stick around until the end, because you won't believe the twists in this tale, like how she pioneered drive-by shootings on motorcycles or named her youngest son after a famous movie mobster. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss a single second of this crazy ride. Griselda Blanco was born on February 15, 1943 in Cartagena, Colombia, but her family soon moved to the gritty, poverty-stricken neighborhoods of Medellín, a city that would later become synonymous with the drug trade. Growing up in extreme poverty during a time when Colombia was rife with violence and economic hardship, Griselda learned early on how to survive in a world that offered no handouts. Her mother was reportedly abusive, and young Griselda turned to the streets for escape and opportunity. By age 11, rumors swirled that she was already picking pockets, running small scams, and even involved in more serious crimes to get by. One of the most chilling and curious stories from her childhood claims that at just 11 years old, she kidnapped a boy from a wealthy family for ransom. When the family refused to pay, she allegedly shot him in the head, though this tale is debated by historians and might be part of the myth-making around her legend. True or not, it paints a picture of a girl hardened by her environment, with a fire in her that would soon ignite an empire. As a teenager in the 1950s and 60s, she got tangled up deeper in the underworld, working odd jobs for local criminals, from prostitution rings to petty theft. She was street smart, fearless, and ambitious in a society where women were expected to stay in the shadows. By her early 20s, she married her first husband, Carlos Trujillo, a small-time hustler and forger who introduced her to the basics of organized crime. They had 3 sons, Dixon, Uber, and Osvaldo, but Griselda's ambitions were way bigger than being a housewife or a minor player. That marriage ended in divorce amid rumors of violence, with some sources claiming Griselda had Carlos killed when he crossed her. Soon after, she was ready to carve her own path in a male-dominated world, using her wits and ruthlessness to climb the ladder. In the early 1970s, Griselda moved to Queens, New York with her second husband, Alberto Bravo, a low-level drug trafficker with ties to Colombia's emerging cocaine trade. This was the era when cocaine was shifting from a niche party drug to a massive industry, and Griselda saw the potential. Together, they started smuggling cocaine into the U.S., tapping into a market that was exploding with demand from celebrities, Wall Street types, and everyday users. They used creative methods like sewing cocaine into clothing or hiding it in suitcases. But Griselda wasn't content playing second fiddle to Bravo. She was sharp, calculating, and ruthless, qualities that set her apart in a cutthroat business. When she suspected Bravo was skimming money from their operation, perhaps keeping a separate stash or double-crossing suppliers, things got ugly fast. In 1975, during a heated confrontation in a parking lot in Bogotá, Colombia, Bravo was killed in a shootout. Some say Griselda pulled the trigger herself, emerging from the fray with a bullet wound to her stomach, but victorious. Whether she fired the fatal shot or orchestrated it, his death left her in charge. She inherited the business contacts, the roots, and a reputation for not tolerating betrayal. This moment was a turning point, showing her willingness to eliminate even those closest to her. Curiously, after Bravo's death, Griselda claimed she was a widow in mourning, but behind the scenes, she was expanding rapidly.
Griselda relocated to Miami in the mid-1970s, the perfect hub for her growing empire. The city was a sun-soaked gateway for cocaine flowing from South America, with its ports, airports, and corrupt officials making it ideal for smuggling. She saw opportunity where others saw chaos and quickly built a sophisticated network that revolutionized the trade. Using innovative techniques like hidden compartments in improper bras and lingerie, she even owned shops as fronts for this. Griselda smuggled tons of product. She recruited unlikely couriers, women, elderly people, and even children as drug mules, figuring they'd attract less suspicion at borders. Her operation was a well-oiled machine, moving massive amounts of cocaine, up to 3,400 pounds per flight at its peak, and raking in millions every month, estimated at $80 million a year at her height. She worked closely with the Medellín cartel, rubbing shoulders with heavyweights like Pablo Escobar, who reportedly called her a mentor and respected her as an equal in a world where women were rare at the top. Griselda's creativity didn't stop at logistics. She's credited with coining the term mule for drug couriers, a term still used today in law enforcement circles. Another curious innovation, she popularized the use of motorcycle assassins for quick, deadly hits, a tactic that would become a staple in cartel violence. Her empire wasn't just about drugs, it involved money laundering through real estate and businesses, turning dirty cash into legitimate wealth. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Griselda was at the peak of her power, living like a queen in Miami's opulent suburbs. Nicknamed La Madrina, or the Godmother, she ruled the city's drug trade with an iron fist, controlling up to 80% of the cocaine entering the U.S. at one point. Her wealth was staggering. She owned sprawling mansions, a fleet of luxury cars including Mercedes and Porsches, and even custom jewelry encrusted with diamonds. She threw lavish parties attended by celebrities and politicians, all while surrounded by bodyguards. But her rise came with a massive body count. The drug wars in Miami were brutal, turning the city into a war zone with over 300 murders linked to the trade in 1981 alone. Griselda was at the center of it all, ordering hits with chilling efficiency. One of the most infamous incidents linked to her was the 1979 Dadeland Mall shooting, where two of her rivals were gunned down in broad daylight inside a liquor store, their bodies riddled with bullets from submachine guns. It was a bloodbath that shocked the nation, splashed across headlines, and put Miami's escalating drug violence on the map, inspiring movies like Scarface. Another curious and dark story, Griselda reportedly had a fascination with the Godfather films, so much so that she named her fourth son, born in 1978 to her third husband Dario Sepulveda, Michael Corleone Blanco, after Al Pacino's character. Griselda's paranoia grew with her empire, fueled by cocaine use and constant threats. She didn't just take out rivals, she eliminated anyone she suspected of disloyalty, including friends, business partners, and even lovers. Estimates suggest she was responsible for over 200 murders, though some say up to 2,000. One chilling personal story involves her third husband, Dario Sepulveda, a hitman she met in the cartel world. They had a passionate but volatile relationship, and when it soured after Dario wanted out and took their son Michael to Colombia for safety, Griselda allegedly ordered his assassination in 1983. The hit was carried out in front of young Michael, who was just 5 years old, in a drive-by shooting. This act of cold-blooded revenge highlighted her willingness to cross any line, even involving her own family. Her sons were drawn into the business too. Tragically, 3 of them, Dixon, Uber, and Oswaldo, were later killed in cartel-related violence after her arrest. Her ruthlessness made her both feared and respected, but it also painted a target on her back. The DEA and local police were closing in, launching operations like Operation Princess, named after her, determined to bring down the woman who seemed untouchable amid Miami's cocaine-fueled glamour. Another curious and dark story, Griselda reportedly had a fascination with the Godfather films, so much so that she named her fourth son, born in 1978 to her third husband Dario Sepulveda, Michael Corleone Blanco, after Al Pacino's character. Griselda's paranoia grew with her empire, fueled by cocaine use and constant threats. She didn't just take out rivals, she eliminated anyone she suspected of disloyalty, including friends, business partners, and even lovers. Estimates suggest she was responsible for over 200 murders, though some say up to 2,000. One chilling personal story involves her third husband, Dario Sepulveda, a hitman she met in the cartel world. They had a passionate but volatile relationship, and when it soured, after Dario wanted out and took their son Michael to Colombia for safety, Griselda allegedly ordered his assassination in 1983. The hit was carried out in front of young Michael, who was just 5 years old, in a drive-by shooting. This act of cold-blooded revenge highlighted her willingness to cross any line, even involving her own family. Her sons were drawn into the business too. Tragically, 3 of them, Dixon, Uber, and Oswaldo, were later killed in cartel-related violence after her arrest. Her ruthlessness made her both feared and respected, but it also painted a target on her back. The DEA and local police were closing in, launching operations like Operation Princess, named after her, determined to bring down the woman who seemed untouchable amid Miami's cocaine-fueled glamour.
In February 1985, Griselda's luck finally ran out. The DEA, after years of surveillance and informants, tracked her down to a quiet suburb in Irvine, California, far from the chaos of Miami. She was living under an alias, blending in as a grandmotherly figure, but agents burst in and arrested her. At trial, she was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for drug trafficking, but the curious part is how she continued operating from behind bars. Using smuggled cell phones and loyal lieutenants, she kept her empire humming, even ordering hits from prison. In the 1990s, however, new murder charges surfaced, including 3 counts tied to her Miami days. Prosecutors built a case with testimony from former associates, but health issues, like a heart attack in prison, led to a plea deal. She served time in Florida and California prisons, where stories emerged of her as a model inmate who read the Bible and mentored others, a stark contrast to her past. Finally, after intense legal battles, she was deported back to Colombia in 2004 at age 61. Many thought her story was over, but Griselda was never one to fade quietly. She reportedly lived in Medellín, reflecting on her life and even expressing regret in rare interviews. After her deportation, Griselda lived a surprisingly low-profile life in Colombia, far from the luxury she once knew, but her past was never far behind. She moved around quietly, perhaps haunted by old enemies. On September 3, 2012, at the age of 69, she was gunned down outside a butcher shop in Medellín by 2 assassins on a motorcycle, a method she herself had pioneered decades earlier in the drug wars. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew her story. It was as if her own invention came back to claim her. No one was ever charged, but speculation points to old rivals or even family vendettas. Her death marked the end of an era, but her legacy lived on. Griselda Blanco wasn't just a drug lord, she was a trailblazer in a world dominated by men, a mastermind who built an empire from nothing using sheer audacity, and a figure whose ruthlessness became legendary. Curiously, she broke gender barriers in crime, proving women could be just as formidable as men in the cartel game. Today, Griselda's life continues to captivate audiences around the world. From gritty documentaries like Cocaine Cowboys, which detailed Miami's drug era, to Netflix's dramatic series Griselda starring Sofia Vergara, her story has inspired countless retellings in books, podcasts, and films. There's even a musical about her life in development. Was she a brilliant strategist who defied the odds in a patriarchal society, or a cold-blooded criminal consumed by her own ambition and paranoia? Maybe she was both, a product of her harsh upbringing who chased power at any cost. Her life raises deep questions about power, morality, gender roles in crime, and the dark side of chasing the American dream through the underworld. What do you think? Hero, villain, or something in between? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and share your favorite curious fact about her. That's the incredible, twisted, and endlessly fascinating story of Griselda Blanco, the Cocaine Godmother. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of true crime, give this video a big thumbs up, share it with your friends who love history and mystery, and hit that subscribe button for more in-depth stories on notorious figures. Want us to cover another infamous drug lord like Pablo Escobar or El Chapo? Or maybe dive into unsolved mysteries? Let us know in the comments and we'll see you in the next video.